So we're back at RSA. Ken, thank you so much for joining.
Yes, thank you, Neil.
Yeah, we had a great talk yesterday. We talked about LLM security. Now we're talking about it in a somewhat of a different light. You obviously wrote a book, and that's pretty much the whole topic of the conversation today, about generative AI security. So I would like to focus on that topic today. So maybe for a start, a brief introduction, and then we'll dive straight in.
Yeah, so again, I'm Ken Huang. I wrote this book with contributions from industry, academia. The book is Generative AI Security. That book has 3 parts, 10 chapters. We will dive a little bit deep into it, but my background is starting as the developer architect. In 2000, actually, I had a project for Capital One as a part of CGI, or American Management System at that time, to develop a credit risk management solution for Capital One. And we found the SQL injection in our code. I'm the architect. So that got me interested in the security.
Got it.
And that's even before OWASP, I think, get started. I do have early involvement in OWASP and also throughout the Security Alliance, contribute a little bit. But recently there's more contribution, but
Right.
That's how I get started. Yes.
Got it. Okay, and what really drove you to write the book? Was it the timing of the release of ChatGPT that really drove you to start the book, or has it been something long in the making?
Yeah, so before I write the generative AI security book, I do have another book published also by Springer. It's called Beyond AI. It's talking about the generative AI Web3 intersection, because I also cover the blockchain Web3 space for some book published by Wiley and Cambridge University Press. So when I finished that book, I immediately think during the process, I think the security really should be everyone will ask, like everyone jumping the ship too fast, trying to develop the LLM application or Gen AI powered application, but not really thinking about security, right? So I think that will have a need. So I start first just myself.
Right.
I have laid out the chapters and give the proposal to Springer, and eventually, the process in Springer, it's you have to have a peer review for your process for the book proposal, and also for the sample chapter. So I submitted a sample chapter. Actually, the sample chapter I submitted is about MLSecOps.
Oh, really?
So, which is good.
That's good to know.
Yeah, and I associated with the DevSecOps culture and the CI/CD pipeline. Why we need the LLM SecOps, right? So this is one of the chapters. We can dive deep a little bit into it, but it has a peer review process during the proposal stage. And also, after you submit the whole manuscript, it also has another review process.
Right.
So,
right.
yeah.
And that's also what I believe you drew in some additional editors to go into the book, right?
Oh, yeah. Additional editors and also the chapter contributors,
Got it.
reviewer. Yes.
That's great. I guess to set the stage for the conversation for those of you that are listening and watching, in the context of your book, can you delve into what is generative AI security, and also why does it really matter?
Right, yeah. So generative AI, maybe everyone knows it has a generative capability that everyone knows. Maybe some controversial, it's like a reasoning capability, maybe someone disagree, but I think certainly it has a reasoning and emerging capability. But it also has hallucination, so that's have some implication on the security, but not just the hallucination, the data, right? The data itself, like data poisoning, So data security is very important. We do have one chapter covers that, and also model. How do you protect the model so it's not be stolen or no one injects malicious code into your model weights, right? So and also the whole MLSecOps, right? And how do you actually building the program? Yes, that's
Got it.
yeah.
I guess like as a next question, right? Like obviously we're kind of seeing AI and ML applications becoming way more critical within products. I mean, the pace of adoption of AI and ML within applications, within products, is essentially driving more and more value to the organization.
Right.
And as they become more rooted in the organization, what do you see as kind of the key risks for these applications when these AI and ML systems may fail?
Yeah, so I think I can wear different hat for that. One hat is really, yesterday we talked about OWASP top 10, so that is something we can focus on. Another hat is I'm co-chair of Cloud Security Alliance, right? So we analyze the existing vulnerabilities and see how we can put the control. So this is another. I also co-chair the AI organization responsibility working group. So we look at the core security. We already have one paper published about the model security, data security, and AI vulnerability management security. And the next working stream is focused on the generative AI application security, supply chain management, and also GRC side of it.
Right.
So we have a different work stream. But to answer your question, I think some of the categories, certainly the prompt injection, deep fake, data poisoning, supply chain, right, and the denial for service attacks. So those maybe, I don't want to mention the top, everyone can say it's top, right? But those are some of the major concerns when organizations trying to develop their LLM applications, right?
Yeah. And I guess like the key point here again is the fact that you have that knowledge gap in the organization. Companies are still, let's say, educating themselves on the differences between traditional application security. So maybe as a question before I head to the next one, is like, how did you see the evolution of that knowledge gap change? Like, are companies more prepared now, or do you think they're still learning a lot?
Yeah, so in one of the chapter 2, I talking about that for my book, right? I said there's a shifting security landscape because of generative AI. Actually, and also in another chapter, I said we need to build a security program. There is a huge skill gap between what application security or AI or data scientists, what they have in terms of what we actually need to secure these applications, right? In terms of one is of course the MLSec operations, but what about also data security, the model security, and how actually you can leverage actually generative AI to operationalize your security operation, right? So yeah, certainly there's a gap, and also I recorded a video course for EC Console. I don't know. EC Console is they provide a training, right? So yeah, I provide a generative AI security training course. You can get a certificate if you go through this training, video training. So,
okay, I didn't know that. I actually want to check that out.
Yeah, this is a maybe someone goes through the training, they just post it, they get a certificate just today. So yeah.
That's great. No, we'll make sure to also add a link to this episode. But I guess as an expression, I mean, we talk about AI, ML. Obviously, large language models have brought AI to the forefront anywhere. Particularly speaking about the security of LLMs, we talked about it yesterday, but for the sake of the folks that will be listening into this, what do you see as like particular nuances to the security of large language models compared to some of the other traditional AI ML, if you can already call it traditional?
Traditional
models, like.
Okay, so your question is from security perspective.
Right.
What is the LLM security differ from traditional
yeah.
ML model?
Exactly.
Right. So generative AI has this non-deterministic, right? But also reasoning capabilities. So the security will be focused on more like in reduced hallucination, you cannot 100% eliminate it, right?
Right.
And some of hallucination has consequence. It may reveal your private data, or it may have some downstream implication if you implement a agent or function calling based on whatever the output is. So there is some downstream implication of the hallucination behavior. Of course, there's also other aspect as well that I actually cover in the book.
Right.
As well.
Yeah. No, I think your point that you made there is definitely relevant, and we talked about it a little bit yesterday as well, where kind of the current breaches, if you can call it that, of LLM applications have been fairly limited to, brand damage because of the embarrassing headlines that it generated. But as we're expanding the capabilities with agency and retrieval augmented generation, we're essentially expanding the blast radius, right?
Yes.
But I think maybe as a follow-up question, as you already alluded to, in the book you also talk about some great approaches to effectively secure generative AI applications. So can you expand on that? What does it look like?
So the book has three parts, right? The first part is just the landscape of the security so far with the generative AI, and also talking about what is generative AI itself. The second part is really secure your generative AI environment, the ecosystem,
right.
The data, the model, and how do you build the program, and eventually go through the ML SecOps. So the third part alluded to your question is how you effectively can leverage generative AI kind of skill set if you have, right? Or capability exists. So the prompt engineering is one of this. So in that book, we dive really deep into how do you using React, chain of thought, or chain of tree, what's the difference, right? And also how to use those kind of advanced prompt engineering technique to help you in your security operations,
right.
Incident response, threat hunting, application security. So this is one part. And also I did a survey of current Gen AI powered security tools.
Right.
So in terms of security operation, and in terms of incident response, in terms of threat hunting, so there is the tools. So in my next book, I will talk about ML SecOps also.
Right.
Yeah. So
yeah.
There's some upcoming book about AI engineer, focused more for developers. It's almost done, and I'm hoping to have that soon. Hopefully, it's June 1st.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely looking forward to that. I guess, you made a point there, which is obviously something that has been quite often discussed. I mean, we have MS Security Copilot. We have companies, I believe, like Dropzone, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Dropzone, yes.
How do you think generative AI will also play a role within security organizations? Do you think generative AI will dramatically change the way we look at SecOps, for example?
Yeah, it is a risk of repeating what I did yesterday. I have to cite Caleb Sima again, right? I think he's visionary in cybersecurity space, and his 3C really brings the conversation to the table. It's about coverage, like using generative AI to increase the coverage, because it really has this reasoning capability, find the needle in the haystack, right?
Right.
So there's coverage, and the context is trying to find who, when, what a hack did, right? Or maybe analyze to see if it's a real positive or false positive, to find the indication of the compromise. And then communication is basically leverage generative AI to generate, right? The security plan. Of course, you have to have a human in the loop, and also you provide a chat interface
Yeah.
for every tool, right? So you can say, okay, what's in my model? Okay, which model I have maybe has some compromised vulnerabilities that hunters community, right?
Yeah.
Find and that was in the sideline. So you can just ask it, right? So it should tell you. And also I add one more is a change, right? Because the whole environment, the business environment always change. The technology convergence is a new technology always come with the quantum, with the IoT, with the AR, VR, blockchain, metaverse, right? So new threat always coming up. How can you adapt to this new change? You will have to leverage generative AI.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
That definitely resonates. I guess like you basically abstract down complexity and you accelerate the time to insight, which is so critical in detection and response. And as you said, it's so critical as well in an environment that is continuously changing, new threats that are emerging as a result. So I definitely like that. But to switch gears, I think one of the things that probably a lot of our users are wondering about as well is how regulation, as it is evolving around generative AI applications, the European AI regulation,
Yeah,
but also the executive order in the United States. What are some things that companies should keep in mind when it comes to regulations, especially around these generative AI applications?
Yeah, I think there has to be. It's also talking in my book. Well, in the chapter 3 or 3, yes. In chapter 3, we kind of surveys the regulatory landscape, talking about EU AI Act, executive order, and also in the legislative body, Senate and Congress, what do they propose, right?
Right.
And we talk about the balance between innovation and the security. Like you have to have a balance, right? And the regulation and the innovation. And so to go back to your question about as an organization, how do you adapt, right? I think it's, I talked with the head of GRC at OpenAI, Nick Hamilton. He was one of my co-chair for the AI Organization Responsibility Working Group at
Right.
the Cloud Security Alliance. So he actually said it's a challenge, shifting landscape, right? And they actually have the AI preparedness framework already on. Trying to be proactive, right? So I think this approach is good. Like as an organization, especially frontier model, OpenAI, Anthropic, Google Gemini, I think that if you go through self-regulation approach for now, that's there is already a executive order, but it's not really a goes through the legislation, right?
Right.
So it may the next administration coming may it's not executive
Yeah.
anymore, right?
Yeah.
So I think in order for you to proactively, you have to self-regulate first. And then you also have to do the balance, right? And also, it's eventually you have to thinking about the difference between open source model, the closed source
Yeah.
model. Like in California, actually, it's recently has the bill just coming dropped like few days ago, and lots of people debate about that, right?
Interesting.
So California bill said if your model cause 500 million loss, you are in trouble or something like that.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, you have to disclose it. Yeah, so it's as people said, it's in favor of this closed model, like those bigger company.
Yeah.
But maybe the open source model, it's
Yeah.
like Llama.
Right.
Right, so it may have more challenge for them, but I don't know. There is still some controversial in terms of this bill. Bill is a bill; it's not finalized yet.
Right.
It's not voted yet. But
That's interesting. I wasn't aware of that. I'll definitely have to look into
Yeah,
that
it's
new
called
bill.
SB 1407. If
Okay.
my memory serves good. SB 1407. Yeah.
Right, but I guess at the end of the day, as I said, it's all about keeping that readiness. But that bill is quite interesting because obviously it will potentially be replicated across some other states and maybe even
Yeah.
replicated in Europe.
California is the biggest state.
Right.
And also it has the Privacy Act, right? That was close to GDPR
Right.
in Europe. And people, when they cite privacy law, it's always GDPR, CPTA,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
I think that maybe in the future it's always EU AI Act, SB 147,
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever the regulation that's coming out.
Right.
It's possible. Yeah.
I mean, it is interesting. You mentioned, Nick Hamilton from OpenAI, GRC.
Right.
I mean, as companies are building their AI and ML programs, and they will be involving the GRC team, what are some of the, best practices that you recommend companies consider as they're working through these issues?
Yeah, I think this again, I have to reference back to my book. In chapter 3, I talk about how do you build a security program. You have to have a security program for generative AI because everything's changed, shift. If you using the older security program for generative AI, it will not work. Of course, you can piggyback. Like you cannot just throw it away and build a new program, right?
Right.
You have to piggyback, augment what you have. So I talk about the security policy, procedures, process along the generative AI. And also in terms of risk management, especially the shadow AI. That's, I think I put a lot of emphasis because of generative AI. Some of the companies say you cannot use in ChatGPT
Right.
because of privacy data or enterprise data. You cannot, right?
Yeah.
But that's not the correct approach, right?
Right.
Yeah, you have to build actually. That's a lazy man security program
Yeah.
approach. Just that to say, right? Eventually, people will circumvent it,
Absolutely.
and that will create a shadow AI. You have a shadow model, shadow application. But the business has the needs, right? In terms of leverages the latest technology, because of shifting business requirement.
Right.
So yeah, so shadow AI certainly exists in small, medium, large enterprise. So how you
Yeah.
deal with it?
And it's definitely a big gaping hole just on the basis that it just generates such a big surplus for the employee productivity that it's very hard to not use it as an employee. But
Right.
I think as a follow-up question to that briefly, it's not a new problem. Do you think it is something that existing shadow IT companies will be solving, like shadow IT security companies, or do you think it will be just something that will be resolved by enterprise vendors that make it easy to companies to then start issuing their own managed LLMs, let's say, for security, right?
Yeah. I think the new tool will certainly come, right? Also leverage generative AI will help. I don't think that it will 100% eliminate shadow AI because
Right.
shadow IT still exists.
Absolutely.
Right, yeah. So I think it certainly with generative AI, it can help to kind of put a light on this, right? Shadow AI. But I think especially when the enterprise is getting bigger, you always will have it.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah.
It's definitely an interesting topic that we also come across quite a bit for obvious reasons. But I guess as a final question, you've obviously delved a lot into the space. You have your own hopes for the future for generative AI security. What are those?
My hope for the
Yeah.
future for, yeah.
Or maybe let's switch the question. What is your prediction for generative AI security if you have one for the coming year?
For the coming year,
It's not an easy question, I know.
yeah, I know. I actually, it's my wish, my hope.
Okay.
My hope is you can have many tools as you want, but you should have just one chat interface
Right.
that connecting it is using API or using agent or using function call, whatever you can use. And you have one chat interface as CISO, you can just say, what's in my network? What is security? How can you fix? And using the agent to do the fix. Maybe some fix may have a huge impact to the downstream application. Then you ask relevant, like it can help to find some relevant people, right? To say, okay, this I need to fix. It's a vulnerability. You let me fix? Okay, the agent will do the work. It's fixed for you. But
Right.
that's my hope. I think it's maybe not next year, but maybe in 10 years.
Yeah.
Hopefully it will
It
come
will
up.
definitely be needed, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But I guess with that, thank you so much for joining us, Ken.
Yes.
We'll make sure to include the details of
Cool.
your book.
Yes, thank you.
And we're also obviously very much looking forward to the new book you're writing. So
Oh, great. Thank
yeah,
you.
and we'll definitely have you back once that book is out to discuss it too.
Cool.
Great.
Cool. Yeah.
Thank you everyone for tuning in.
Yeah. Thanks.